Hi everyone, Kelly here with Canon. In this quick tips video, I'm going to talk about how to show motion in your imagery using a long shutter speed. Typically, when I show my own artwork, there's one question I often get. Is that a painting or a photograph? I didn't mean to make them look like paintings, but ultimately some of them kind of do. The main ingredient that creates this kind of look is shutter speed. Lengthening your shutter speed during a capture can be a fun, creative way to make something new. Okay, let's get into this. First, let's talk about what shutter speed is and how it affects your image. Shutter speed is the length of time the camera shutter is open, exposing light onto the camera sensor. A shorter shutter speed will freeze motion, a longer one will caption motion blur or movement in the image. Shutter speeds are typically measured in seconds, or in most cases fractions of a second. The larger the denominator, the faster the speed. For example, 1/1000th of a second is faster than 1/30th of a second. Slow shutter speeds are typically anything longer than 1/60th of a second. Keep in mind that the shutter speed works in conjunction with the aperture and the ISO. As you change your shutter speed, you'll need to change one or both of the aperture or ISO. If you speed up your shutter speed one stop, like 1/125th to 1/250th of a second, you're letting less light into the camera. If you're capturing in manual mode, you'll need to increase your aperture one stop, for example, f16 to f11, or you can choose a faster ISO speed. If you're not ready for photographing in manual mode just yet, try setting your camera to shutter priority mode, the TV icon, and your ISO to auto. This way, as you change your shutter speed, the camera will change the aperture and/or the ISO as needed for the correct exposure. Let's talk about light for a moment. Since longer shutter speeds let in more light, you'll have a difficult time doing this in bright situations. One way around this is to photograph early or late in the day. I'm a fan of the golden hour, which is the hour after sunrise and before sunset. The light is often magical at this time of day. If you do find yourself with too much light and unable to get the slow shutter speed you want, a neutral density filter will help. With this filter, you can prevent light from entering the camera in measured amounts. Now back to some slow shutter speeds. Here I started with 1/8 of a second to show some motion, but it was still fast enough to stop some of the water. As the speeds get slower and longer, you'll see the water gets smoother and smoother. Finally, at 25 seconds, you get a super buttery smooth image. When photographing with slow shutter speeds, a tripod is necessary. You want to capture the movement in the scene, not the camera's movement. Now that we covered what shutter speed is and how it changes the look of your image, let's get more creative. Capturing an image using a long shutter speed is part technical and part intuition. Ultimately, the technical aspect is deciding how long to set your shutter speed. Remember, the longer the shutter speed, the more movement you will capture. Choosing the right length of time is where the intuition comes into play. Watch your scene or subject. Study the way it moves. How does it change while you watch it? How does it make you feel? Using a long shutter speed in nature photography can create some gorgeous imagery. The trick to getting more of a painterly look is to have everything in your image moving in some way. This can be tricky, so find the design, study the movement, the color, the light. Is the water flowing a specific way on its own or around an object like a rock? Are there leaves floating on the water? How is the grass swaying, left to right and down? Seeing this design is the most important part. If you find yourself drawn to a spot and you're not sure why, look for the design. Also, don't be afraid to go abstract. Sometimes that's what's needed. Here's a scene from one of my recent shoots. The waves were only about 1 to 2 feet tall, and it was a dreary, wintry day. I decided to zoom in and concentrate on a small area of the water and study the movement and breaking waves. This is the final image. By abstracting and capturing a small area, I was able to make an image I'm happy with. It's amazing how much beauty there is in the small details. This concludes our quick tip on using slow shutter speeds to capture movement and composing for a painterly looking image. Thank you for joining me. I hope this has inspired you to go out and give this a try. And have fun creating. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and feel free to leave a comment or question below.